You hate ads? I hate ads. You know what I like? Patreon.com/inkdependence keeps this blog ad-free. Hello folks, welcome to Inkdependence. I'm Mike, and this is Private Reserve's American Blue. Now, I have a bit of a history with Private Reserve because they were the first inks that I bought for myself back in the day because they were available at those shops in the mall that sold ink and fountain pens. And so I started out with things like Lake Placid Blue and some others, and American Blue was one of my favorites. And so I was excited to get my hands on this. This bottle was sent out for review by Yafa, which is the company that owns the Private Reserve brand now, and also manufactures the Private Reserve ink in their factories. And they say the old problems of slime in the bottle and mold and things are just not going to happen anymore. And I believe it. So that's good to hear, I think. These come in 60 ml bottles, and they're between $12 and $15 online, depending on where you go. So, you know, pretty solid price, I think. I also have one of the older bottles of Private Reserve. This is, you can now see the, the difference in the labeling and all of that. Let's go ahead and open these up right quick, compare the bottles. Now, the old bottle, as you can see, is labeled $10.95. I bought this several years ago, and the bottle is slightly larger than the 60 ml bottle that it comes in now. I think it was 66 mils back then. So not a huge amount of inflation. I think that's totally fine. You can see different labeling and such, and you can see that the new bottle is quite a lot shorter than the old bottle. I mean, it's shorter by a cap, so like, I don't know, half an inch or so. I think that's the one problem that I have with the new bottles. I really like this nice wide mouth, but I think this was wide enough. And I think that as you get lower in ink in this bottle, it's going to get harder to fill it because it's not got a huge amount of depth. I mean, more than some of the real small bottles like Giherbon and things like that, which are really kind of a pain. But it also doesn't have the tilty sides of, say, a Waterman bottle or something of that nature. So, you know, a little bit of give and take, but nice big glass bottle. Good stuff. Okay. So, since I have both of these, by the way, we will be comparing the new to the old Private Reserves. You can see some of the difference right there into the cap on the old one in my left hand. Yeah, a little bit of, see a little something there? You don't see in this one? All right, so let's get to this ink. This is Private Reserve's American Blue on my regular 80 grams per square meter Rhodia paper. It is, as you'll notice, a slightly different Rhodia paper than I usually use. This is a spiral with lines and not a flip over the top dot pad situation. So I was getting a bunch of bleeding and such from the dot pad, and I'm like, not a lot, but more than I think I ought to have, and I think maybe that dot pad is a little bit wonky. I don't know, man. But I decided to go for this one. This is a whole different one that I bought at a different time, and it seems like it's totally fine. I've written on it with a bunch of stuff. So I wanted to see if it would bleed through, because as I was writing the original review, it did bleed through a little bit in just the written lines, and I was like, that's weird. So I put it on here, and as you can see, there is a tiny amount of bleed through. So like here and here and here, and maybe a spot or two here, but in the writing, nothing really is a problem there. So that's good. This ink works on Rhodia, but it also does this, which is not super common. I've had some bleedy inks do this in the past where it bleeds through in the swatch. I actually had something on this page to protect it, so because I was afraid something like that might happen. So I think unless you're putting down a whole like bunch of ink, and this is a lot of ink, y'all, so that's not nothing. But my complaint about this right off is that this is a very wet ink, and so it does really kind of want to feather and spread. And I didn't remember that from the original, and so I'm glad I inked up both. So I've been using this new Private Reserve in my Shown Design Ultim pen. This has a medium Yovo nib. It's a pretty medium nib, you know, nothing crazy there. But this ink is quite wet, so anything wetter than this, I think I would have a real problem controlling the flow on this ink. Now, for the original one, I was using this, which is a Parker Duo Fold, and this one has a fine nib. I think this is a particularly nice looking nib. Two-tone with the heart and stuff. It's cool. I really like this nib a lot, and this ink does just fine in this this fine Parker nib. But I think finer nibs are going to be better for these inks. So, looking here, we have flow, wet, definitely wet. Performance, not great on the bad paper. So if you keep this on premium paper, you'll do just fine. Like, there aren't any problems here with feathering or bleeding or spreading or any of that weird stuff on the Rhodia paper or on other premium papers. But if you put it on this kind of paper, which is Staples 20-pound, 30% recycled copy paper, you're going to have all those problems, unfortunately. So I've got some feathering here. It's definitely done some spreading. You can see the fine there is just as wide as the medium almost. And on the other side, it did bleed through on both of them. I think kind of equally it bled through on them. So, you know, that's not ideal, but if you keep it on better paper, this is a striking color. So, other things, qualities, there's really a nice high saturation in this new Private Reserve American Blue. However, you'll notice that is the only thing I put there because you don't get the sheen that you used to get in the Private Reserve American Blue in the new one, which is a little disappointing, honestly. I really liked the sheen, and you can see here that you get a fair amount of sheen. You can actually see the sheen on there from the fine one with the original ink, the original Private Reserve, and you don't get any of that from here. So if you don't like sheen, the new Private Reserve American Blue is going to be better for you. If you miss that sheen, you might just have to look for a different ink, and there are a bunch of inks that are blue with red sheen these days. This is I don't know if this is the first one, but it's certainly not the only one anymore. Now, as far as comments and stuff, like, look, I'm a little bit disappointed in it, but I think I was disappointed in it because I have such fond memories of American Blue, and since I've been writing with both of them, I mean, the new one is totally fine. It is a very nice looking blue. The original one is a bit darker and it has a little bit more saturation and it has whatever it is that makes that sheen, I think. But as we'll see in the chromatography, I don't know what the difference is here. So interesting stuff, right? But they do both bleed and feather more than I remembered, which is kind of, I mean, look, that's a problem in my brain and not necessarily a problem with the ink, as long as you keep it on good paper. Okay, so plan going forward. We're going to do our little water test. We're going to look at chromatography. We're going to compare these inks, new and old, and then I'm going to show you a bunch of other inks that are pretty close, or at least have something in common with Private Reserve's American Blue, the current version. Okay, so let's get... and we're also going to look at it on some other papers, because why not? All right, let's get some water on here. Get some on the words. Get some on this thing here. Splooch. Good. That'll do, pig. Go ahead and give that a shimmy. Now I can definitely see some of the blue coming off, not just in here, but also behind it in the lines. So let's mop this up and see what we've got left, see if our work would be retrievable if we dumped our iced tea on it, or a nice tall glass of water. It's hot out there, folks. Drink some water, make sure you hydrate. Stay indoors. Use a fan. Those are my advices as a Texan. Get those salts in you. All right. So plenty of blue came up here, and in fact you get some of the blue like hash marks and even from where I was patting it dry there. So yeah, not waterproof, but you definitely can see what was going on there still, and I think the words are not too messed up to read, so that's pretty good. Not water resistant, but you'll have something left, and that's important. That's what we really need to know from these tests. Okay, so let's look at the chromatographies. Here they are side by side. And you'll notice that these look like they've used the same ink twice, right? Well, they are different, but they don't really look any different to me. Like, they all have the same hues. It's got the same black band up at the top. It's got the same kind of trail behind it. The new one looks like it might have actually a little bit of purple or something, like a little violet back in here, but you see a little bit of that here too. So these are very, very similar, if not identical. And I don't think they're identical because one of them does sheen and the other one doesn't, but you don't pick any of that up here. It chromatizes the same. All right, let's look at it on a couple of other papers. Firstly, we have my Tomoe River ink journal, which is this one right here, and you can see here is the Private Reserve American Blue New, and I think it looks great on this Tomoe River paper. The stark white and this nice bright blue. I dig this color of blue quite a lot. And then you can see here the Private Reserve American Blue from the older bottle. I've had it in there for, wow, a couple of months. Good job, Mike. So I've refilled them each a couple of times in that time because I have been using this ink quite a lot because I really like this color. And like I said, keep it on good paper and you'll be okay. Now, Here's my currently inked Inky Fingers notebook, and this is wheat straw paper. Wheat straw is a great paper if you can get a hold of it. And here's the new formula. Again, nice striking bright blue color. And then down here, same kind of look, actually. You're not picking up a whole lot of sheen, although you do get some sheen in here. Not a huge amount showing up on here, which is kind of interesting, because I definitely saw it on the Tomoe River. Okay. So let's look at some color comparisons. Firstly, I just went ahead and I just went ahead and can I pick these up? There. First, I just went ahead and like just dipped them in with some little dippers. These are a great product if you've never used little dippers before. They are these. These are coloring little dippers, and you can get these from Well Appointed Desk. My friend Anna makes these. They are pretty great. They're printed at Skylab Letterpress, which her husband, my buddy Bob, runs, and it's pretty great. And you can just like dip these in a bottle, and then I just sort of hang it up to dry on a little clip, and you can just like have a little ink book. And you can flip through it if you want, or you know, whatever. But I think this is pretty good, and it does definitely illustrate, I think, the difference between these two, and that is that the new American Blue doesn't have that sheen popping through at all, whereas the old one, definitely you get that little fringe of sheen where it pools the most. So if you use a heavier nib with this one on good paper, you'll definitely get some sheen, whereas you just won't with the regular new American Blue that is the currently purchasable American Blue. So I think the color is really, really, really close, but the behavior is slightly different. Okay, let's look at a whole bunch of comparisons. There's the current American Blue. Here's the original recipe, and here you can definitely see that that difference with the sheen, bunch more sheen on the current one. Let me get these out of their sleeves right quick. I forgot to do that because I'm a professional. Okay, so let's put this aside. We get it. There's some extra sheen. All right, so here it is next to Straits Pen's Honest Ink's Poor Man's Sapphire, which is meant to mimic somewhat the old Parker Penman Sapphire. And this one does have more of a sheen. You can see it around the edges. And it's a slightly more indigo-ish blue. It's definitely a little bit darker. Got this sample from my friend Kimberly. Thanks, Kimberly. Then we've got Papier Plume's Calais Real, which is one of my very favorite Papier Plume inks. I think this is really a very attractive blue, and I quite dig it. And I think it's very close to this one, although not as wet, and I don't remember it having as much of a, performance problem. Then we've got this is one you can't get anymore. This is Birmingham Pen Company's Cathedral of Learning Panther Blue, which I wish I'd gotten more of these bottles because I love this old Birmingham Pen Company ink. It's a beautiful blue, a little bit of sheen there, and they don't make this one anymore, so you can't get it. But it's kind of close, a little bit darker. I think that might be where my taste goes these days, slightly darker. Then we've got Monteverde Emotion Series Confidence. And Confidence is one that I bought from John Gould's last year, and I didn't love, it's okay. I've reviewed it on this channel before, and it's fine, but I mean, look at the difference in the written bit. Here it looks like it's kind of the same. Like, this definitely looks a bit lighter, but I mean, look at that written bit. It's entirely different. It's just kind of pale and a little bit boring. This one is not boring and pale. It's just a little bit under sheeny, a little bit on the wet side. And lastly, one that I keep telling myself I'm going to buy, and I just haven't done it yet, Colorverse Supernova. Look at that. If you like this kind of color, but you also like that kind of sheen, get yourself some of that Supernova. Also, thanks for the sample, Sandra. I gotta buy a whole bottle of this one of these days. Hopefully soon. All right. So there we go. That has been Private Reserve's American Blue. Find this at your favorite Private Reserve retailer. They are all over the place because Yafa has good distribution, and you can get it for, as I said, between $12 and $15. So is this a hard recommend that I think everybody ought to get? Not quite. It is a little bit on the persnickety side because it wants to stay on that premium paper and maybe be used in those finer nibs. But otherwise, perfectly good ink, and I quite like this color. It's a good color that is like a lot of my favorite colors. So check that out. I'll see y'all in another video. Like, comment, subscribe, tell a friend, become a patron. There's a Discord now. Everybody likes a Discord. So I'll see y'all later. Peace out.